freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 453 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is the role of law, and our guest is Gina Godbehere. Gina is a fourth-generation Arizonan and a 2024 candidate from Arizona Maricopa County Attorney. With over 25 years of experience in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, serving as a bureau chief and trial attorney in assignments including juvenile, gang, homicide, and the repeat offender unit. Gina is a wealth of experience and is seeking to be elected to serve as the county attorney for the largest county in Arizona.
Welcome to the show, Miss Gina.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My goodness. I look at you and I'm like, you just look like the sweetest lady on the planet, right? And then look at this. This is some gritty, hardcore work you've been doing for how long? 25 years?
28 years. Yes, it's
8 years.
Mhm.
That's incredible. And so right on the heels of that, I'm going to say that politics is a snake pit. I mean, it feels like you are probably, pretty adept at wrangling snakes anyway, but Arizona politics have gotten particularly dramatic over the last few years. And I just wonder what makes you want to toss your name into this hat, into this arena?
Cheryl, thank you for having me. And what a great question. I was not going to run. I did not throw my hat in until about February. But I've been serving this community for 28 years, both protecting this community and also trying to represent victims. And what I've seen is that Maricopa County is suffering from an epidemic of leniency, not just Maricopa County, but across our country. Far too long, lenient plea offers and sweetheart deals have allowed criminals to escape meaningful consequences for their action. I can't stand by and watch the status quo that believes everything's fine. Everything is not fine. Look at our neighborhoods. We have homelessness growing. We have addiction problems. We have a revolving, broken criminal justice system, and there's no desire to fix it. The desire is to keep making sure that the train's running on time, even if we're not providing good services and we're not protecting the community. And I refuse to accept this status quo. I believe in a justice system that prioritizes accountability, fairness, and that protects victims. So I threw my name in because I know we have to do better for the future of our state. We cannot afford 4 more years in this direction, or we will lose this state where I am raising my daughters in and where my family has lived for generations.
Gina, I agree with you. I've lived here all my life. I'm 69, going to be 69. And I have seen so many changes, and it just seems like we're getting weak. We're letting people off they're not holding themselves accountable. And if we don't get people in there that's going to make changes, it's not going to get better.
No, you're right. And I started in the Sheriff Joe Arpaio time where we had tent city, we had accountability, and we went from one extreme of locking people up to the other extreme where we're a society of excuses. We can't lock them up because they have a drug problem. We can't lock them up because they have mental health issues. And and we just keep reinstating people on probation, not addressing their underlying issues. And it's fueling this revolving broken door. And then we finally get them when they commit a violent crime that if we would have intervened earlier, we could have prevented some of those tragedies from occurring.
How many times do we see that in the news where somebody just get out of prison the same day? or because they get out early and they go kill somebody or they do a DUI or whatever. It's happened so much.
It's so true. And, I want to say that this is not even like a left-right issue. This isn't even, Republican versus Democrat issue, because the incumbent, the person you're going up against that's sitting in the seat now, is the same party as you, which is Republican. Is this a partisan uh election?
No,
Part.
well, it is partisan, at least to get the position, but it
Mhm.
shouldn't, because if you commit a crime, it shouldn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, you deserve to be held accountable. And if you're a victim of a crime, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. Victims deserve justice. And the role of the county attorney is to treat everybody equally and make sure that they are unbiased, which is why that's not always happening recently, why there's a loss in trust, because we've seen how the prosecuting's office has been politicized across this country, especially in the prosecution against President Trump. But we also have seen under my opponent, Rachel Mitchell, in the Charles Ryan case, giving a sweetheart deal to a political insider that makes it appear that we have a two-tiered system of justice. This is unacceptable. This is why people do not trust our government institutes and institutions, and we have to change that.
I just don't understand. When did the offender become the victim? That's what we have now. They are the victim.
Yeah, in our juvenile system, we used to focus on rehabilitation because they're of their young age. And that might have made sense in the juvenile system, but now it appears that rehabilitation and the focus of the defendant has entered our adult system as well. And what's been lost in this is accountability. There's other theories of justice. It's not just or theories of why we have punishment. It's not just to rehabilitate. That's one of the goals, but it's also deterrence. It's to protect the community for incapacitation and all that's lost. All we care about now is, I don't want to say the poor defendant, but we care more about the defendant than the victim. Excuse me. I handle victims' rights cases now, and it's sad because we have victims. When you say the defendant was young, well, so were the minor victims, and their voices have been lost.
Boy, that's so right. You need a drink of water. I got a little tickle. I hate it when that happens. So for people listening, of course, we broadcast not just, across the state of Arizona, which is where, or across the Maricopa County, which is where this election is taking place, not even across the state of Arizona, but across the entire world, actually, we have viewers. And so not everybody is going to automatically understand what the role of a county attorney is versus any other kind of attorney. So can you kind of break that down for us?
Yes. So a county attorney would be called a district attorney in most states. And the county attorney is the one person in Maricopa County, which is large. We have, depending on what list you look at, anywhere from 27 to 40 cities, 4.6 million people. The county attorney is the one individual that is responsible to file felony charges for every felony that occurs. The attorney general has limited capacity to file felonies, but the county attorney is the one entrusted and responsible for filing almost every felony that occurs. And that's everything from a theft of a vehicle to a homicide to a robbery, all of those burglaries that occur in Maricopa County. And nobody knows why it's so important to have a tough prosecutor filing these cases in the city of Goodyear. So if I can give you that example, in the city of Goodyear, that's in Maricopa County, we had 19 bicyclists that were driving down a road. We had 2 lanes each way and then a bicycle lane. And 19 bicyclists were out for their morning drive, and they were going 2 by 2 by 2 down the road. The defendant hit the side and plowed over all 19 bicyclists, killing 2 and injuring a dozen others. And a little about that case, the defendant claimed his steering froze, but they had an evaluation done on the vehicle and they could not corroborate there were any issues with the steering. The defendant had marijuana in his system, but he claimed it was from the night before. But the main thing is he didn't break for over 5.5 seconds, according to the law enforcement people that were there on the scene. And so when you think about 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, he didn't break for over 5 seconds and killed 2 people and injured dozens of others. And every felony charge was turned down and sent to the city of Goodyear as a misdemeanor. And when you send them felonies to the cities, there's no supervised probation at most city levels. So these are now unmonitored individuals in our community if we even get them on a misdemeanor offense. So I remember at that time, the mayor was upset, the council was upset, the police chief was upset, the cycling community were all outraged, yet there was nothing the city of Goodyear could do because the county attorney is the only one that can file a felony charge.
And he didn't do it.
She did not do it.
Wow. So could I ask, that is absolutely terrible. You know, I don't know how that could happen, but so if you become the Arizona County, Maricopa County Attorney, who do you have to answer to?
It's a good question.
You, the voter. The board of supervisor only approves the budget, but it is an elected position, and the only one we would answer to is the public.
So if we have a liberal leaning sided attorney right now, they're not influenced by anybody. They make the decision.
No, and a lot of people have asked me on some of these weak plea agreements that are coming out of there, is it the judges? And the thing in Arizona is the county attorney has more authority than the judges because there are amazing enhancements on the record. So if somebody commits the 3rd misdemeanor, it could be enhanced and it could be treated as a felony. If somebody's on probation, they're not entitled to, and they commit another offense, they are mandatory prison. If they are a repetitive offender on the 2nd offense, they should be a mandatory prison. If they're released on parole and committed another offense, it's mandatory prison. So the decision to dismiss the enhancements or those allegations falls with the county attorney's office. So the county attorney, when you have this revolving broken door and you have the person in Phoenix, that stabbed the police officer, he was sentenced to prison for a mitigated term. He was released on probation. He committed another felony, was reinstated on probation, committed another felony, reinstated on probation. Then he was trespassed from the QT, and when the officer tried to escort him out, he stabbed the officer in the neck. And you look back at this case, and he has a documented history of using meth, a documented history of mental health that he never was treated for. So this is one of those issues of why did we keep reinstating him on probation without mandating treatment? It was bound that he would eventually attack somebody under the influence of his addiction. He had a violent background. These are things that need to be fixed going forward, and why we can't afford 4 more years under the current administration's direction. Is
that Rachel Mitchell is the county attorney right now? Is she the one that didn't prosecute the guy that ran over the 19 people in the bicycles?
Yes, Rachel Mitchell did not prosecute the 19 people that ran over the bicyclists. And I worked with Rachel Mitchell for 25 years. It's not personal, it's her policy. She has liberal leaning policies. She's basically become a Democrat, and she's not holding offenders accountable like she needs to. It is the reason why I'm stepping in the race.
I appreciate you stepping in the race, and she should be fired. She should, and hopefully she will be fired with the next election. But that is uncalled for. Somebody has to answer to that. She should have to answer to that. As anybody,
she tried to, I heard her this last weekend, try to give a weak example of she had a friend who died walking across the sidewalk, and the sun was in the eye, and the driver hit them, and that was transferred to Yavapai County that made the same decision not to prosecute. I don't know how you can compare somebody that hit somebody because they're blinded with a light to driving over 19 people for an extended distance and time. That tells me she doesn't, that's like comparing apples to oranges. So she either doesn't understand the facts. I walked the scene. I know the distance and I've talked to the victims. So she's not answering to it. And just when you say that, there was a clean election debate. Rachel Mitchell failed to show up. Today, I am on PBS Horizon. Rachel Mitchell has declined. She's declining to debate me on these issues, which is cowardly. She deserves to come forward, explain her actions, and have a debate to be able, so the public can be informed. Instead, she's hiding out. She doesn't want to be called out. And she wants to pretend that everything is just fine in Maricopa County, which it is not.
Well, to me, it looks like the Arizona Maricopa County attorneys would be responsible for making sure that people that break the law are charged with the crime, and then let the judge decide what would happen to them. That is another issue. But for her to ignore that, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. I am so shocked at that I know where I'm going to be firing her.
Well, and it's interesting because before her, we had AG Mark Brnovich, then we've got Rachel Mitchell, and now we're having an election. And both Brnovich and Rachel Mitchell ascribe to the same party, political party, but somehow their methods are completely different.
So actually, Cheryl, if I may, we had first we had Rick Romley, then we had Andrew Thomas, then we had Bill Montgomery, and then we had Alistair Dell for a short time, all Republicans, all the same party. Mark Brnovich was actually the Attorney General, also the same party. And Mark Brnovich, I'm glad you announced him though, because he's endorsed me in the race. He's worked with both Rachel and I. He knows that we need a county attorney who's going to show up every day to fight these battles, and not just during election time, which suddenly my opponent is showing up and attacking Katie Hobbs and attacking Chris Mays just recently, even though she's been silent for the last 2 years, because it is she's facing an opponent in a contested primary, but she's still not debating me. And we need somebody that's going to stand up for victims' rights, something that my opponent, even though she claims to be this career sex crime prosecutor, when I was in the legislature this past session and I led 2 victim bills, my opponent was silent. She didn't even give a thumbs up to support the legislation that allowed victims to get police reports so that they can file order of protections when needed, and also have priority to get these police reports so that they can get out of their leases. My opponent didn't even give a thumbs up for that. So she's been absent in fighting for victims' rights, and she's been absent in her role of protecting this community for the last 2 years.
Well, thank you for correcting me on that. And that's one of those things, right? Like, so we think we know what this job does and what that job does. And I just conflated 2 right now. So I'm so happy that we are sort of unpacking this more for the people listening. So this next question is almost going to sound like, so if you're a gun owner, maybe we aren't going to like this. But if it's another thing where if you really understand what's being said here, we absolutely are going to be for your stance on this, because we are law-abiding, responsible gun owners, and we want people held accountable when they do the wrong thing, because it hurts all of us. So the question is, on your website, you specifically mentioned that Arizona needs more strict enforcement of gun possession laws. So just enforcement of laws that are already there, right? Mm-hmm. Tell our audience how your role as the Maricopa County Attorney will impact responsibly armed citizens.
Thank you for that question. And I want to make it clear, I am a 4th-generation native. I come from a hunting family. And also ranchers. My great-great-great-grandmother was the first woman to register a cattle brand in the territory of Arizona. So there's a picture of her in 1941 in the Arizona Republic walking by wagon train carrying a rifle. We have been born and raised to be responsible gun owners. We're part of the Elk Society. So I'm not talking about any restricting. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to bear arms. I'm talking about people who are prohibited possessors. There's certain people that should not have a gun. and we need to enforce those laws. And there's also a number, especially with the illegals coming over, illegals are not allowed to possess a weapon. We need to make sure that we keep those laws clear and we enforce them to protect this community. And I talk to you, I've heard you speak before. I'm also such a proponent of with juveniles. There's certain ones, rifles are exempted, but there's certain guns. We have irresponsible young juveniles walking around carrying handguns in their waistband without a holster, without everything. And I've been to too many scenes where I've watched individuals who are drunk, under the influence, pull out a gun, and they take the clip out thinking that the gun's safe. They forget about the round in the chamber, and they shoot and kill their friend. They shoot and kill a girl they're dancing with. I remember every one of those scenes. It's heartbreaking to see young people who go to a party dead because somebody has a gun and he's drunk and showing off. They're not allowed to be, when you're those type of cases too. We need to make sure that we have responsible gun ownership. I would love to see training and education in how to if you come into contact with a gun, how to make sure that you can make that firearm safe. And I know that's something that you believe in too. We need that. That's just basic common sense education that everybody should have.
We see that all the time, where even on YouTube clips and whatever, where people think that because the magazine's out of the gun, that it's safe. And I don't understand this. You know, everybody, they're preaching for gun safety, but they're not preaching for gun education. They're preaching for gun elimination. Whereas I have guns in my house, my grandkids know how to handle guns. If a friend well, let me rephrase that. It's sort of like the pool deal.
Yeah.
I need to teach my kids to swim, but I don't have a pool.
Right.
But my next door neighbor has a pool. So it's the same thing. If my grandkids go to somebody else's house, they know what to do if a gun is there.
Exactly.
They know what to do.
And a pool.
So even though we don't have a pool, we teach them how to swim so that if they get to a pool, they can swim.
I think that's a great point. And I couldn't agree more. It would prevent a lot of tragedies that we have seen occurring if people knew better how to handle a firearm.
Right.
It's so true. And one of the hats I wear is the state director for Women for Gun Rights. And our tagline is education is the key to safety, right? Not legislation. So somebody that's going to be so irresponsible to carry in a way that you mentioned, and while they're inebriated and all of these things, you're never going to legislate that person to do the right thing. But if we started education, my analogy to match Dan's is like the knife drawer. So we have children that understand when they open the drawer in the kitchen that has spoons, forks, and very sharp and potentially dangerous knives, how to interact or not with the dangerous knife, because we've taught them from the youngest age. But then it comes to guns and everybody gets all, let's just hide this thing. Let's just not even mention it. And that doesn't empower our children to be good citizens, be responsible citizens, and be safe. And so I absolutely agree with what you're saying about that.
Well, my dad taught me when I was a kid, if you see a gun, take it apart and clean it.
Right.
So
take it apart and clean it. That's good. That's my motto now for you. So yeah. So we've been hearing for some time now that a number of reasons that morale is so bad and so low among law enforcement, not just here in Arizona, but nationwide. How does that come into play? How does the county attorney's office impact that in our state?
Well, thank you for, I come from a long line of law enforcement in my family. My uncle was the former sheriff here in Maricopa County. I support law enforcement completely. We need to protect those who protect us 24/7. And what's concerning with law enforcement, and I've seen this happen in my 28-year career, it used to be that some of our officers, they followed in their father and their grandfather's footsteps, and they were generations of law enforcement protecting this community. Now it got to be where they just want to get their time out, retire, leave, and they're telling their sons not to become police officers, to
I
become
know.
firefighters. They don't want, so we are having a real inability to even to recruit. Go look for hiring of a job. You'll see all agencies are trying to recruit, and it's troubling. And I'll tell you a couple things, because I spent so much time training at the academy, and also trying cases where aggravated assaults on officers. And I've seen, out of any victim in our system, the police are the only ones who are shot at, stabbed, put their uniform back on, and go back into the same set of circumstances again, where they're re-victimized over and over and over. What they do is incredible, the pressure that they're under. And we see, whenever or not, nobody's perfect. And sometimes there are some officers that were bad apples, and there are some people that make mistakes. But you think of all these clips we've seen on the news, these officers, we have thousands of officers across the state, and they're wearing a camera 24/7. You know how many hours and minutes of video that we have, and you rarely see them, thank goodness, of these issues. And then when you see one, even if it's in another state, every officer's blamed for the conduct of the one officer, and all those thousands and thousands of minutes of good work by the police are ignored. And that's concerning. So number one, we have to make sure we support our law enforcement. We need them to protect us. Number two, when you have a county attorney who turns down cases, furthers cases, unless there's this pretty little ribbon on it that it's a perfect case to try, who just turns down cases, further cases, or sends them to the cities as misdemeanors, what you do is you demoralize law enforcement. You embolden the defendant, and that's what leads to lawlessness that we're seeing in these cities. Police do not want to be proactive. What's the use of sending a person who's stealing 8 or 9 times and is a repetitive shoplifter? Why should I run around and try to get proof of the prior convictions to send them to the county, because they're going to turn it down anyway? So they stop bothering. And I've seen that, and I've heard that directly from the officers. We need to end that. We need to start working collaboratively with our law enforcement and our communities to identify those repeat offenders, so that we can focus on who to use enhanced prosecution with, are the people that are most endangering our communities.
Yes, the law enforcement people that I talk to, they're afraid to arrest because they're afraid they're going to be racist, or they're going to be, whatever else there. And then when they do arrest them, they're back in jail, back out of jail before they even get off shift.
Exactly. And they're still doing paperwork on the last
Yeah.
side.
We live out in the suburbs of Phoenix. And so some of our agencies that used to drive people down to 301 West Jefferson, which is in the center of Phoenix, if they drove someone down from, say, Buckeye or Goodyear or any of the Peoria, it would take 45-minute commute time. They would spend several hours in the booking process. And then, so you could take an officer off a shift for 4 hours while they're booking somebody in jail, only to, you're right, seeing them released that same night, and sometimes back in the area where they just trespassed them from or removed them from the very next day. That is a problem that we have to address, and that is what demoralizes law enforcement, because then they start citing and releasing, because what's the difference? I'm not going to keep driving down and wasting shifts, so everybody cites and releases, and you have the same people with 7 different warrants out for their arrest.
Gina, I had a FFL, and I did class 3 stuff, which machine guns, sawed-off shotguns, things like that, all perfectly legal. And if I messed up on my paperwork, or if I did something wrong, I could get 5 years in prison for that. A guy broke into our store once and stole a machine gun, and he was out before I could repair the building, and the ATF wouldn't even charge him because he was a minor. And it's like, and neither did the county. And so it's like, what is the purpose? Why be in law enforcement if they're just going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
And I don't understand that, because where is the deterrent? You allow it, I don't know the fact of that case, but you allow somebody to go break into a store, steal a machine gun, which is frightening to see what the intent was and what they were going to do with that, because they're not trained to handle that weapon, and we don't know the intention of them.
Right.
But you and then you don't prosecute them or hold them accountable. That has to change. But that is contributing to this society that we become, where we are heading toward lawlessness. We are heading toward what is happening in a lot of those liberal cities that we're seeing across this country. And we are not, I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that does not happen here in Maricopa County.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And in that particular instance, what we ended up learning was that he was being used as a pawn by someone who was over 21 and would have been put in jail for
But didn't
5
go
years.
further with that either.
And so there was, so the whole thing was a mess, but I think the message to the 15-year-old was, I guess I can do this again, and I think that that's a terrible message, rather than holding people accountable for what just the natural consequences of life for what they've done, and
And
give them an opportunity to pick a new pathway instead of making it easy for them to stay on the wrong pathway.
100%. And what's more frightening, Cheryl, is the adult who used the minor, because they got
Yes.
away with it too. So there are a lot of times where we don't catch them in the act, and we're not going to be able to prevent it. So you could have gangs, you can,
Mhm.
especially we know with the unsecured border that we have criminal migrant gangs right now operating in Maricopa County. So they could utilize minors to break in and possibly avoid accountability. That should frighten and scare everybody.
So I was just
Exactly.
thinking, is the vision of a liberal to let crime go crazy so they can create more laws for more control? Because what is the reason? I mean, that could be the only thing I could see. Let them go. Let these gun crimes happen, because every gun crime that happens, we can get stronger with our doing the anti-gun stuff.
We could speculate, but we don't fortune tell, so I don't honestly know.
I don't understand. Why would you let?
But just to move on, I'm sorry.
I know.
But you touched on the issues with the unsecured border, and just one small, huge, but one issue that that creates. So we feel it very, very closely here in Arizona and in our county, Maricopa County. So how does the attorney's office intersect with these issues?
Well, the unsecured border is terrifying, not just with the gangs that I mentioned, but we have, I think, we know at least 100,000 unaccounted for minors that we don't know where they are, and that may
That
end
is
up
terrifying.
trafficking area. This could be a huge humanitarian crisis that will come and play out in the years ahead. We also know fentanyl. Fentanyl's pouring over our border. It's killing members in our community every single day. And these are real problems. So the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, it intersects with us because we are prosecuting the drug sellers, the smugglers. We will be dealing with the drug addicts that are committing these crimes. And also fentanyl is illegal, so we would have to be dealing with those issues. But moreover, if my concern with the border is this: if we can't handle local issues, which we're not doing, we have a revolving broken door. We are downgrading felonies to misdemeanors and setting them to the city where they're unmonitored. We have an expansive diversion program that we haven't talked about that is dangerous and is harming our community. If we can't handle these local issues, how are we going to handle the threats of this unsecured border? We know that all these people coming over, they are disappearing into our communities. We haven't vetted them. We know it's a matter of time before there is going to be another terrorist incident. I know we just caught someone on our terrorist watch list, but there's others out there. We know about the gangs and we know about these other problems. So you need a leader who's going to be able to address our broken system, reprioritize law and order so we can handle this threat at the border, because this threat is real and we need to be proactive addressing this. So I'm already working with ASU. I'm working in experts in the area to do a summit on the border, to bring in clinicians and experts in all areas to try to proactively brainstorm and be prepared to handle these issues that we are facing.
Wow, that's incredible. And you touched on you called it a diversion program? What is
Yes.
that?
Diversion is where you do 10 or 20 classes and your case is dismissed. My opponent likes to say she expanded this robust program that allowed people to avoid prison. But the problem is you're talking about 10 or 20 classes, depending on if they're deemed high risk or low risk. They don't even have to be individual. It could be group sessions of counseling, basically.
Oh, wow.
And then their case is dismissed. They have no criminal record, and which means they're not a prohibitive possessor. They can go buy a gun, they could vote because they have no record. But when you look, and we used to do this diversion for low-level offenses like drug addiction, maybe anger management in some domestic violence situation or parenting classes. But now it's been expanded to include robberies, weapons offenses, assaults on law enforcement, impersonating a police officer, unlawful flight from law enforcement. I can go on and on. This is outrageous. We've never offered diversion in my 25 years for these type of offenses. And when you go back, and so you can have somebody commit a robbery, get a diversion, and then if they're successful, go buy a gun. And here's what's frightening. When you look at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office stats on their diversion, they want to say they're proud of the stats. Well, they're ignoring that only 52% of the individuals that are offered diversion successfully complete. 48% fail, which means they're offered diversion. They go back unmonitored into the community while they're supposedly on diversion. Then eventually they're called back into court if we can even locate or find them and they don't have warrants out. But let's just look for a moment at the 52% that succeeds. Only 52%. That's not a good rate. That tells me you're not making a good decision of who's going into that program. Of that 52% who succeed, they have 12-month recidivism rate. And they say 15% were rearrested of that 52%, and 4.5 ended up with new submittals to MCAO. That is not a good, robust, successful program. That is a failure, and that is endangering our communities.
I could see that if it was trying to do something for nonviolent crime, for the occasional thing that happens, but for violent crimes, robberies, the things that you mentioned, there should be no leniency towards that at all, because it's not like they accidentally did it or they deliberately did it. And I don't know, I'm old school, and I think that an eye for an eye, you know?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go to a class and learn how to not rob somebody. I'm sorry, what? That's a
Well,
real
and-
thing?
Is that like the shark thing? Fish are not food.
Yeah, fish are friends, not food.
And then the frightening thing is that person, after they finish their classes, gets to go buy a gun. Somebody who robs somebody does not need to be eligible to buy a gun. They should be a prohibited possessor.
Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Well, hopefully you can bring some sense to the office and start drawing, some of that back in that has just gone wild. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. But I've heard you speak several times, and you lay your case out for why you are, fit for this job so well. But you also speak of the need for collaborative, relationships and the need to be a proactive leader. And you have experience doing both of those. And so I want to ask you on those points, what makes you uniquely qualified to be the county attorney of, I believe it's the fourth largest county in the entire nation?
Well, thank you for that question. What makes me unique is I not only have that experience of being 25 years in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office as a manager in that office, but I also have been able to see it from the city level as the city prosecutor, and I've now been able to see it from a victim level as a crime victims' rights attorney. So I see the downstream impact that these liberal policies are having on our cities, on our local communities, and on victims of crime. That's something my opponent doesn't have. She's only got 32 years in that office. So it's almost like that ivory tower view. You miss how you're impacting everyone else. Additionally, from the very beginning, when I started the very first juvenile drug court, I've always looked for ways to implement change and to fix issues, not just accept them for where they are. So I responded to a scene of a murder suicide about 8 years ago, and I started a nonprofit called Speak Up, Stand Up, Save a Life. Because we noticed in every school shooting across this country, it's the exact same warning signs. There are people who have mental illness that self-medicate on illegal drugs, and oftentimes they had untreated trauma. They also have bullying that's intersected in that. It's all together. And so I brought together community leaders across Maricopa County, and we do a conference once a year trying to empower our students to know what the warning signs are and to tell a trusted adult or parent so we could try to prevent tragedies, and we can identify those at-risk juveniles and divert them from our criminal justice system and our future homeless population. So we're trying to not only save lives now, but we look at the long-term impact of getting help of those people that are at risk to enter our criminal justice system. That's education and prevention. So I see what's possible when you break down silos and you bring people together and you empower the community to do good. I know that's why I know we don't have to accept this as a conclusion with our broken criminal justice system. We can address homelessness, mental health, and also keep this community safe. It's not one or the other. We could do both and have a balanced approach to criminal justice.
That is beautifully said. And, you mentioned one of the people who's endorsed you, but you've got some pretty impressive endorsements, including I've seen on your signs, because it's sign season, right? It's election season, so everybody's got signs out, that you are victim endorsed. And I thought, I've never seen that on a sign before. And if people really stop and think about what that means that they know there's somebody in their corner, that they do matter. The life of the person that was lost to a murder matters because somebody believes in the rule of law. And can you just unpack that a little bit? We're starting to run a little tight on time, but I think that's worth exploring.
Well, and I'm proud to be police endorsed and victim endorsed. So I have the endorsement of the former Sheriff Joe Arpaio and also agencies like Scottsdale and Peoria. And victim endorsed really started because one of the reasons I ran is because of that Goodyear case. So the bicycling community and the victims impacted asked me to run and right away wanted to stand by me and endorse me. I've had other victims come forward that also want to endorse me because their voices just have been silenced and they're frustrated. And so I'm pledging to return the voices to crime victims so they actually have a say in the criminal justice system and they're not treated like a hindrance. A decision's already been made and the victim's objecting now, and they're treated currently under my opponent as an obstacle, and it shouldn't be. It should not be. We should be standing up. I believe in I always will support some kind of criminal justice reform and helping where there's smart ways to avoid prison. But criminal justice reform should never come at the expense of victims, especially victims of violent crime who have suffered enough. So I will always stand proudly behind the victims and make sure that their rights are protected.
That's fantastic. Well, as we just start to wind down, can you tell folks, we know that campaigns run on people power and money power. Tell folks how they can follow the work that you've done, learn more about you, and support your campaign if they believe that, we really do need to implement more law and order.
Thank you. You can follow me on Twitter at Gina Godbehere, or you can go to my website and get all of my handles. My website is Gina for Justice. That's ginaforjustice.com. And you are right. I'm going against an incumbent. I'm going against an incumbent who gets 2 press conferences a week. And she can afford to not debate me because she gets free media every single week. She also has the money for flyers, from the people who are doing contracts with the county. When you are grassroots and you are an outsider challenging it, I'm relying on the community to make this happen. I know law enforcement will be your first line of defense. I pledge to be that last line, to do everything to keep this community safe, but I have to ask everybody to join me in that journey, join me in that fight. So any ability to spread my message, if there's any donations or anything to help me spread that message, it would be greatly appreciated. And I'm so blessed, and thank you for having me here.
So I see
Absolutely.
that she's probably the other lady, Rachel, is that right?
Mhm.
She's
Yeah.
probably endorsed by all the criminals. And thank
No,
heaven. I mean, at least Maricopa County has mostly good people, and
Yes,
it show. But
absolutely.
if I was a criminal, I'd be voting for her.
Well, and when you have the county and it's such 4.6 million people, there's contracts with the county. There's a lot of people that like to keep the status quo around, and all those people will support, and it's politics. I get
Yeah.
that, but I know the status quo is broken, and if we allow and we continue down the same course, we're going to lose our state. We need change at every level in this country, and we need to retake and get back to work and use common sense and real people to engage and to fix the problems that we're facing. We cannot continue to ignore them.
If we can get to all the law enforcement and tell them what's going on, I think that'd help a lot. And I'll be talking to my guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for all you have done. Best of luck in your efforts here, and just God bless. Gina Godbehere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I don't usually get mad when I do these interviews, but I'm really angry about this bicycle thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm angry.
And it's in our neighboring town.
Yes.
Our neighboring city.
And-
We're in Avondale.
And we're seeing it.
Goodyear's
I mean, I
right
do
there.
talk to police officers all the time and talk about how frustrating it is when you arrest somebody and they're out before their shift's over.
Mhm.
There was a deal in California where a guy stole a car and he got caught and he was arrested. And the same officer arrested him again later that day for stealing another car.
Yeah.
He got out, stole another car, and
Well, that's
You know?
California. Let California keep their
well,
nonsense.
yeah, but California, it's coming here. And we have a weak sheriff.
Mhm.
Or do we even have a sheriff right now?
We have an appointed sheriff right
We
now,
have
but
a-
we have an
we ha-
election.
We have a weak county attorney.
Mhm.
We have a weak governor.
Mhm. A weak sheriff.
So we have to do something.
Yeah. So, well, that's what the ballot box is for.
Yep.
And, I know that this is specifically one county in one state. And so if you're sitting in Kentucky or somewhere, then you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with me? Well, what I hope when people hear these kinds of conversations is that they will get inspired to pay more attention to what each elected officials' roles really are, right? This is called the role of law, right? What's the purpose of the law? And to either run yourself, right? If you're a constitutionally minded person, put your name in the hat or support somebody who is running. And this is how we change the country and really move that line back to where our founders placed it for us when they wrote this document, our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, and try to put firewalls between, legislators and the citizens.
Democracy.
Stop it with democracy. Stop it. And I'm
We're
so
losing it.
tired of hearing the word democracy. We are a constitutional republic. We
Yeah.
are a representative republic.
I know that.
And on the news every night, you're going to hear
We're
how,
losing it.
well, our democracy is in danger. Democracy is mob rule. We don't need mob rule. We want, even the little guy to have as much of a voice.
For the person that doesn't understand that, let's break that down a little bit. You say mob rule. Mob rule sounds like it is bad no matter what, but it makes it sound like it's disorganized and mob rule. What it is where the majority makes the decisions.
Right.
The majority makes decisions. So that's what California is facing right now.
Mhm.
They're not using the Constitution. So the people that are honest, hardworking people, gun rights, gun owners in California are being chased out because majority rules. I
Well,
don't
and
want a
it's
majority. I want the Constitution.
yes,
That's
and
it.
it's like so they have this concentrated area of people in the big cities,
Right.
right? And so that's their majority, right? Because they have so many people in the city. And so then they end up with a governor like
Newsom.
Newsom, who is, he might be charming, he might be young, he might be handsome, but he is a tyrant. He is a dictator. And so people that are all up and down the coast, all up and down that state of California have to kowtow to what this concentrated group of people has said they have to.
And he
And
eats where,
so
yeah,
a representative republic
yeah.
is supposed to help ease that balance so
Right.
that everybody has an
So
equal
just
say.
remember with COVID, how he ruled California.
Mhm.
He ate at restaurants while you weren't allowed to eat at restaurants. He had privileges that you are not allowed to have. And there are a lot of people in Congress right now that have privileges that we don't have when they shouldn't have. They work for us.
Exactly.
And we are constitutional. So please, let's don't use that democracy word or whatever it is.
Democracy.
Whatever.
Did you say democracy?
Crappy word. But anyway, Gina, thank you very much for being on the show today. We really appreciate you telling us all your.
Absolutely. I've met her in person. She's a genuine person. I really do like her. I like what she stands for. I like what she's shared with us today.
And thank our listeners too, because the listeners are going to relay this information.
Absolutely. And here's what's hard is we haven't had our primary yet. So we've sat here and we've said all of this. Suppose that Rachel Mitchell wins again. And we've kind of made it clear that we're not huge fans of Rachel Mitchell. So we generally try to be super neutral until after the primary. And
What's she
then
going to
we
do
get
to me? She's
fully-
going to convict me of something that they're going to let me off because they let everybody off?
That's a good point. That's
So
a good
who
point.
Who cares? I want
That's a good
I
point.
want a constitutional person in
Mhm.
all of our offices. If you don't follow the Constitution, I am against you.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Bottom line. So come at me, bro.
Come at me,
Because
bro.
this,
That's great. All right. Well, again, thank you to Gina. Thank you to all of our amazing listeners all over the globe, wherever there's internet. We have people who are viewers and listeners. And if you want to go back and rewatch this video or share it, right? Because we do need to get the word out about what the position is, what the election is about. Go to YouTube, GunStreamer, or the OpsLens smartphone app. Be sure to like and subscribe so it tells those platforms that you value this information. Gives us a little hedge against cancel culture. If you want to listen to the audio only version because, it's summertime, you like to be out by the pool or mowing the grass or taking a long bike ride, go to our website, gunfreedomradio.com, click the on demand tab, and
you better binge listen to your hot content, darling.
nice. It almost sounded like Schwarzenegger. No, I
No,
didn't sound like
no,
Schwarzenegger.
no.
That was bad. That was a bad impression. Then I've lost my place. What else are we doing?
We binge listen to our heart content.
Yes. And if you want to click, have links to click on the works and bios of all of our guests, just go to our guest tab on our website. All right.
I love it. Cheryl is one of the most organized people I know, and she has a script and she knows exactly what to do. And I love it when I get to turn her a little to the side a little bit.
Yeah. He throws me off every once in a while and he gets great glee out of
if
it.
there's a way that she could get a grip on her program where it wouldn't slip and slide and she could follow it 100%, that
What
would be
a
amazing.
segue, babe. That was awesome. Yes. If only there was a locked in grip for my flow of brain power so I don't get sidetracked. Locked in grip is created by our good friends Brian and Shelley Hill of The Complete Combatant, and it is a liquid shooting sports chalk. It gets hot outside. If you're in places where it's humid, you know that when you're out on the range, you need something that is a no slip, better traction, heightened connection product for safer, faster shooting. It is made for shooters, by shooters, and it is lockedingrip.com. Get some for you and your favorite shooting
And
buddy.
remember, a safe grip A solid grip is a safe grip.
Nice. Easy for you to say.
I
Democrat.
had something, you messed me up.
Democracy. I'm going to keep saying that one. That's a good one. All right. And we love to support American jobs on American soil, buying American-made products. And we have an invitation for you today for an invitation-only online private shopping network. It is patriothousehold.com/GFR for Gun Freedom Radio. I see him grabbing our little favorite snack that we buy on patriothousehold.com/GFR. So this shopping club is helping our family and millions of others cut the cord on those huge corporations that use a portion of every one of your dollars to diminish our freedom and our individual liberties. Well, when you go to patriothousehold.com/GFR, you are supporting a company that will expand our freedoms and individual liberties. So from laundry soap to skincare to delicious snacks that we tend to snack on in between episodes, steaks and even ground beef from the Riverbend Ranch brand that is through this company. You can order items as you need them, or what I do, I set my order and forget it, and it shows up on my doorstep. It is convenient. It is high quality. It is supporting American jobs. I just can't say enough about it. And when you do shop there, a tiny piece of it comes to us to support our work at Gun Freedom Radio and the Second Amendment Foundation with all of the lawsuits that they're waging across the nation to support our Second Amendment rights. So again, patriothousehold.com/GFR. All right, we got to get on out of here. Dan, what are we going to do?
What?
We're going to pray for our nation.
Yeah.
We're going to pray for our leaders and people who are running for positions of leadership and responsibility, like Gina Godbehere. But there are some that aren't. We don't really like them that much. The ones that are currently
You mean
in
like
office, maybe.
the ones the
And
criminals
so-
love?
Maybe. So are we going to pray for them too?
The criminals?
Sure, we can pray for the criminals, but I think we should also pray for the leaders that are in the position to seek wisdom, find wisdom,
And a way to get out.
and well, pray for the voters to make a good decision, right? So anyway, yeah, maybe especially we'll pray for the ones that aren't quite on the right page with us and our Constitution. All right, until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week, and God bless.
Bye-bye.